gambling companies that offer wagering now generate about 8.7 billion, nearly $9 billion a year in revenue. So 500 million, it's a lot of money for ordinary people, but for these companies, it's but a drop in the ocean.
How would you describe the effect of the current gambling industry in Australia?
Oh, it's a very negative effect. We've got far too much gambling. We're the world's biggest gamblers by a fair margin, and we have been that way for a long time. I mean, the biggest problem in Australia is a lack of coordinated regulation, particularly of the wagering sector, but also with poker machines. So poker machines are the number one problem in Australia. We're generating about $15 billion a year in losses to people, mostly from poor areas. And wagering is now, as I said, nearly $9 billion a year. And between them, they account for about 75% of Australia's gambling problems. So we need them to be better regulated. And in my opinion, we should have a single national regulator to cover all aspects of gambling.
Yeah, so this penalty came from the Communications Authority. Tell us more about why you think a national regulator is needed.
The problem is that the de facto regulator of wagering in Australia is the Northern Territory government. Now, with all due respect to Northern Territory, it is a low taxing jurisdiction. There is a ceiling, I think it's $1 million or thereabouts, on taxation for companies operating in the territory, regardless of how much money they make. And most observers, including me, would assert that it is probably a pretty low regulatory standard that is applied in this situation. So what we've got is the smallest territory regulating an industry, the overwhelming effects of which are felt in the states. And, the states have imposed a point of consumption tax, but they're not actually incapable of regulating the operators. So ACMA has to step in when these things are seen to be excessive. But all of the bookies are constantly pushing the envelope. We need a national regulator so everybody operating in this business knows what the rules are, and it needs to be well resourced, and it needs to be able to hold these businesses to account.
There seems to be a growing awareness of the impacts of gambling. Do you hold out much hope of the national regulator actually being established? I guess this depends on the federal government embracing it.
Yeah, I think it does. And, in the last parliament, the federal government had a really important chance to change the way gambling ads are regulated, and they declined to do that, which is very deeply disappointing for many people. Hope, unfortunately, as they say, is not a method. What we really need to see is a practice from government, a commitment to actually do something about this very serious problem, which most people, I think, would say is a serious problem. So my argument would be the first thing off the rank should be a national regulator, followed, if not at the same time, closely by a ban on all gambling advertising. And after all, most forms of gambling are not able to be advertised, and the real standout, of course, is wagering.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're going to be pushing pressure on this Albanese government in its second term. Charles Livingstone, thanks very much for talking to us from Melbourne.
Thank you, Joe.